because we're going behind GDP to look at labor markets and also how they produce goods in macroeconomic. So this is the start. Where do we go from here? Well, we focus not only on GDP, economic growth, these topics, we also look at income distribution. So it's not only about having economic growth, a bigger cake, but it's also about the portions. So this is the topic in the unit 3. We look at both then income distribution. We look at income, and here it's Gini, and it's also this, like we're talking about, it's not important that you be able to measure Gini coefficient, but you should use a diagram like this to explain income distribution. And also, like in this example, we can start in the WSPS model to explain what happens there, what happens to employment, unemployment, real wage, and then we can go to the diagram on the right-hand side and discuss the change then when it comes to, when it changed in, like here, the Gini coefficient, it goes before 0.36 and after 0.17. So this is a topic that we cover at the beginning of chapter 2. And from there, what is this thing here about? Well, this is typically something that's important for many reasons in Norway, but it's also, I think it's a good example of a solution. How? Because if we compare countries, we find that the unemployment rate is 2-3% in Norway. We can just go to Sweden. Now it's more than 8% unemployment there. So there's something we must be doing right in Norway. And a reason, or one topic, is the unions. To look at how we deal with unions in Norway. So a big portion of the labor market, that they are organized in unions. So from the beginning, when we use the model, it seems like adding this thing about unions, it should be more unemployment. But this is not the case in Norway. So this is a topic we cover in part 4. The part 4 about unions. And also how we organize, when it comes to discussing the new wages, we start with the competitive industry, the manufacturing industry. And so we start there, and this is also how special how we do it in a country like Norway. So where do we end the topic today? We end by looking more into, especially here, we look into the difference between these two. Because households' consumption and companies' investments are very different. Like we use here in 5, we talk about that in 5 that consumption, smoothing, and investments, they are more volatile. So this is a topic, and also when we look at the short run changes, the business cycles, then we typically, when we want to go behind GDP to look for reasons why we have business cycles, we typically look at investments. So investments, so the reason why we get business cycles. And finally, we have this thing about Phillips curve. Phillips. It is not actually it's not actually a model, but it explains something, the relation between unemployment and inflation. And you can, like we are going to do, using it together with the main model to try to explain reasons for inflation. So where we end this down here, this is typically a way to explain why we get inflation. So this is what we're covering today. Let's look into the first topic then. And that'll be here in the supply side of the macroeconomic, unemployment and real wage. We typically start by looking at different categories here. So I mentioned, I used Norway as an example, and from the beginning, if we look at Norway, 5.6 million people, then we divide, the first thing we do would be to divide between population of working age. That's the one between something like 15, 70, 74. And then it's people between 15 and 70, 74, but they are not in population or of working age. Added here, young or elderly, and also is called, they are called inactive. This one, inactive. Then we are down to, when we look at the population here, of working age, we are down to about 4.1 million people in Norway. And then we go to the next step, would be to look at then the labor force. The labor force, around 3 million people in Norway. So it's then here is the rest. What did I say? You must stop me, huh? Here we find the inactive. We find, because there's the red one. It is out of labor force. Those are the inactive. So it's those between 15 and 70, 74. That's not in the labor force. They are inactive. And also, I talk about business cycles. You know, if you go back to the financial crisis in 2008-9 in the United States, the inactive tripled during or after the financial crisis. So it also follows the business cycle. It goes up and down with the business cycle. But for you, it's important to know the difference then between here, participation rate, employment rate, and unemployment rate. So if we look at participation rate, then we use the labor force. So then we use in Norway, we take 3 million people, divide by 4.1, and we get the participation rate. If we look at the employment rate, then we only count the employed. So it's not 3 million people like in Norway, it's 2.9. So employment rate is typically a little bit lower than the participation rate. So these are the two. And finally, it's the unemployment rate. That's the unemployed, like in Norway, 100,000 people around. And we divide by labor force, and that is 3 million people. So this is important to understand the difference, and also one reason for that we use participation rate or employment rate, it is that people can go out, or to put it like this, the unemployment rate could go down, but it's maybe not always positive, because they can go to the inactive part. So there's a reason why we can use both employment rate and also participation rate. So then we find that, like in Norway, it's around 70%, but in some other countries, Turkey as an example, is less than 50. So it's an important reason also to use, not always look at unemployment, but these two others also. What do we find in 1.4? We find the difference between nominal and real wage. So when we put it into the model, we have the HR department, they support the nominal wage, and then it's the product market, they support the price. But for us, it's the real wage that explains something about the purchasing power. So that's also why we, in the model, we use real wage. So, and we can look at either, like here, we can say the level, we can say by using nominal wage, divide by the price, or we can look at the change in the real wage. So if we look at the change in the real wage, then it's the change in nominal minus the price change. So minus the, for instance, using consumer price index, measure the inflation. So then you can look at how did the purchasing power change, for instance, during a year. What do we find here? We find that both the nominal and CPI and real wage. So if we look at the red one, it's the real wage. So suppose you only had the real wage. How can you use it to explain more about it? So if we look at the red one, we see that it starts at 100, and then in 2015 it is back up again at the same level. So it's here, it's 2015, it's back up again. Can you explain? So I have a break talking now. Discuss with yourself or with your neighbor. Explain. So we always look for where we start. So in this example, we start at 2010. So the index, it starts at 2010. So then all three is 100. What happens after? Well, the real wage, it goes down. So the real buying power goes down. And what do we understand then? Well, the green one, that's the inflation, must be higher than the nominal wage increase. So inflation is higher than nominal wage, well, then the real wage goes down. What happens then in 2015? If we just look at 2015, then they are back at the same track. So they change in the same speed. So in 2015, both the nominal wage and the increase in the nominal wage equals the increase in the prices. And then after 2015, what happens then? Well, the real wage goes up. A bit up and then down and so on, but it goes up. Then you know that the nominal wage, that's the blue one, it must be higher than the price change, the green one. So this is a topic from, or topics from the beginning. Let me add then a typical multiple choice question. So here you find a typical, that's from, it was from, when was it? Fall 24, exam fall 24. It was this one. This is a typical multiple choice question for this topic. Have a look at it. What about the first one? Labor force increases, the real wage will fall. Well, we don't know. The next one, the labor force in Norway is approximately 3 million people. This means that there are approximately 3 million people between 15 and 74. Is that right? Why not? If we're not using the working age people, so you're missing the inactive. You're missing the inactive. See, unemployment measured in percentage shows the proportion of the labor force that is unemployed. Yes, that is right. So this one is right. Then unemployment measured in percentage shows the proportion of the adult population between 50 and 34 who are unemployed as well. Yeah, so this is one example then. It's typically that you, in the beginning of the macro section, then you find multiple choice questions from chapter 1. So both here in chapter 1.3, where you find the statistics or definitions, and also in 1.4 you find the different measures of wage. Okay, so let's move on then to the next topic. It says here, it's the supply side of macro. It's the wage setting curve, and it is from the firm's HR department and the labor market we get wage setting curve. It is a relationship between the real wage set by HR, or what they actually set is the normal wage, but then when we get information also about the price, then we can find the real wage. So it's the aggregate level of employment in the economy. So when we know employment, we also know the unemployment part. So the problem, how to set the right nominal wage, considering reservation wage, no shirking, and the level of unemployment. So when we then look at the market, we look at the market, employment, and real wage, we say that as an example, we start here to say that this, for this many employed, we need to set a kind of a minimum wage that is explained by the reservation wage. So the reservation wage, that is the argument that if you go below this, you will not get employed. No one will want to work in your company. So at least you have to cover the reservation wage. But if we stop here, then there will be a lot of turnover. So people will not stay. So you have to go up. You have to go up more than this. And why is that? Well, we add this thing about shirking. No shirking, so we have to add some more than the reservation wage. And then it's not the horizontal curve, it's a curve that slopes upwards. To explain that we all have different reservation wage. So the more people you want in your company, the higher wage you have to give them. But what else? this is number 1 and number 2, but there's also a third one. What do you understand from the third one? Well, you understand that if you look at the labor force, because the closer you get to, or put it this way, the higher the employment, the lower the unemployment. So when you get closer to full employment, then you need to pay higher and higher and higher wage. Why is that? It is this point number 3, explaining that there are so few unemployed left. Here there are so few unemployed left, so the power of the workers, they increase. So, and also another important point here be that you will never get full employment. So if you continue up here, very, very high real wage, you will never get no unemployment. So this is the WS curve going like this. And then we look at here a way to explain it. Or we're looking at if you shift the WS curve upwards and to the left, what could be reasons? To think about, you can use this thing about the value of the job. So the value of the job, if the value of the job goes down, well, then you have to pay them more. So what could be reasons for the value of the job goes down? What could be reasons? Take a minute to think it over. What could be reasons? So we also from chapter 6 in the microeconomic book, we got this thing about economic rent. And then we used the term of net benefit of a job minus the net benefit of the next best alternative. So when we look at the opportunity cost, it's not only that we compare two goods, it's not only that we compare this job with something else, but for this job there are some benefits and there are some costs. And also, if you look at the alternative, there are some benefits and there are some costs. So what are typically benefits of a job? It's your salary. That's a typical reason. What's the cost? Well, could have been more nicely to have a free time. You have to make an effort in the job. So that's the net. What's the benefits? The next best alternative. It's typically unemployment benefits. So that's the benefits. What's the cost? It's the kind of stigma being unemployed. So let's look at what could be reasons for, we explain it by shifting the curve up. What could be reasons? Well, it could be that the next best alternative is something that's better. And what is reasons? Typically higher unemployment benefits. So here, example, higher unemployment benefits. What are other reasons? Well, it also could be other things on the benefits side. Or it could be that cost, this one, is going down. So stigma is going down. That could be a reason. It could also be something here that's going up. So both would be that you would need to pay better. So examples, an improvement in the life outside of the job. That one example, and a third one. If workers find it more than unpleasant, to work, it's more hassle, it's more, you have to work harder, so that's examples if the costs increase here. Or the other one, if this one goes down, then it's another reason why you need to pay more. So this is an example. You also remember I had this example about Amazon, and we had this thing about incomplete contracts, and let's think about it before the break as one example. What did Amazon do? Well, they paid a higher wage than Walmart. Walmart is a typical alternative. So, higher wage, well, then the reservation wage is higher. It's a reason why you will not skip working at Amazon. But on the other hand, what do they do? You have to download the app. So they can follow you, how many times you went to the toilet during the day, how many breaks you were standing still there for several minutes. You know, they can watch you, follow you everywhere. So this thing about no shirking, it's very easy to find out if you shirk or not. So this is the one part of the main model in macro. Let's take a break then before we continue.